Well, hey, Southern Oregon, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. So glad you could join us today. We've got some great news in the statistics department. Super exciting. We've been waiting for the market to kind of show some proof of getting better. And we get to have Brandy Jennings from First American Title. We're going to re-air her interview from a couple of weeks ago talking about preliminary titles and escrow. Brandy Jennings interview, very educational, and we have a lot of people writing offers, putting their house on the market. So it's good to have Brandy Jennings from First American Title air again. In the meantime, let's get to the exciting statistics. Exciting because it's changing. It's not perfect, but it's changing. But here we go. Klamath County prices year over year this week are up 9% to an average $362,592. And just a reminder, this is residential, single family only. Klamath County number of solds year over year are down 30%. They had 16 closings this week, and the number of listings in Klamath County year over year are up 14% to 281 residential listings on the market this week. So congratulations, Klamath County, to have the prices come up and the listing come up as well. Josephine County prices year over year this week are down 1%, so basically flat, which is great news. The average single family home in Josephine County now costing $449,747. The number of solds in Josephine County in the residential market were down 60%, 60. There were only 15 closings in the residential market this week, and the number of listings are down 9% year over year in Josephine County to 355 active listings on the market. But 9% down is not as bad as it has been. Jackson County has some great news. The prices are up in Jackson County year over year to a whopping $520,772 on average. That's up 6%. Congratulations, Jackson County. The number of solds are down 6%. Year over year in Jackson County, there were 55 residential closings, and the number of listings are down 10% in Jackson County. There were 744 active listings on the market in Jackson County. So we're seeing some buoyancy in the prices. We're getting a few more properties online, but we sure need more, folks. There's buyers out there, and they are slugging through the high interest rates to get a property. So think about putting your house on the market. And if you're buying, keep trying, because there's something out there that you will love. In the meantime, let's take a quick break and bring Brandy Jennings from First American on the air. Well, hey, Southern Oregon, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. Boy, we have a treat for you today. We have two of our favorite people from First American Title. We have Brandy Jennings and Diane Davis. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
There's so many things that the title company does for us, and we appreciate you guys every day that you're helping. One of the things we wanted to touch on was the preliminary title report. People hear the word prelim, they don't really know what it is, and it's kind of a big deal, isn't it?
It sure is. It's important for buyers and sellers to really review those preliminary title reports anytime they are having a real estate transaction. Of course, you want to have a title and escrow company, so you have your neutral third party, but that's how you get it, it's through us. So First American Title really prides ourselves in giving the best information and remaining a neutral third party. And of course, we are the only title company that has our own bank. So we're very financially secure, and we keep your money secure. The bank is just for the real estate transactions. So we don't deal with as much fraud as the other title companies do because of that. So yes, we definitely.
Wow, that's huge.
Thank you. Yes, we love it. Yes.
So Diane, can you give us a little history? Tell us a little bit what a preliminary title report is.
It's a complete report of the history of the property and anything of the public records that still affect the property. So easements, restrictions, liens, all that we'll report on. The current vesting. You know, if any parties are of your sellers say are deceased, we'll show or if a probate needed, stuff like that. That's required to close the transaction.
So it's an analysis of sorts.
Yeah, that's basically, it's an examination of the records. And that's what we do day after day, minute after minute in our department. That's what we are. That's all we are, just kind of research, and our team is very experienced. We have a lot of people that have been in our industry for a long time, so it helps, when you do have buyers that want to sit down with you, that you've got somebody to sit with you that can answer those questions.
So where does the information come from?
It comes from the public records, meaning anything in the official records from the clerk's office or the courts. And then those things daily are transferred. We have our company gets those records daily and posts them to what we call our title plant. And then we run our own title search from that information that's posted daily. So it's always coming in a few days behind because of all the, you actually have to sit there and read out legal descriptions and stuff to figure out what properties they affect and all that. So it's always a few days behind, but that's how we maintain our plant.
Wow.
The preliminary title report is basically our commitment that your clients are going to read to go over everything that's going to be covered or not covered in their title insurance policy. So it's going to include names of the parties in the transaction, buyers and sellers, the types of the coverage, owner's policy, lender's policy, and the amounts of that coverage for the title insurance. It's going to show you, conditions of the property that are going to include like easements and liens and judgments, any existing loans that are on there. It'll give you the legal description, a copy of the map of the property. We also provide copies of those recorded documents. And then basically that's our agreement on what's going to be taken care of in that title insurance.
So that brings up a really good point because people don't always know what title insurance is and what it's for.
Right. So title insurance is different than most insurance. But people think about insurance and they think, okay, I'm going to have to pay a monthly premium forever. Title insurance is a one-time premium. So you're going to pay it the one time, and it's going to cover anything that may have happened in the past. So if you were to buy a piece of property and something came up later, maybe a past heir shows up on the doorstep of your property and says, "Hey, this property was left to me by my great grandmother."
A relative.
When
you said heir, like we're talking about.
Oh
heir,
yeah,
no. Some long lost relative knocks on your door.
Right. So then the title insurance is going to take care of that. So if there's missing heirs, HEIRS, or if there's liens or something that get recorded after the fact and they were actually a judgment or lien that attached to or belonged to the previous owner or owners before, that's when title insurance is going to come in and just make sure this property is yours. Your title insurance is covering that you are the owner, and it's going to take care of anything that popped up later on, things that had happened in the past.
Yeah. So one of the things that surprises people, I think, is how many times the title report gets checked. Like there's more than one instance. What's all that about?
Well, you never want the title report. You never want it to be more than 30 days old. And especially at closing, you want to try to have it within a couple weeks, just to make sure there's no last minute surprises, a lien that hits that, postpones your closing date, stuff like that. And, every time the sales price changes, the buyer changes their name or if they're going to change it into their trust, the loan amount changes, the lender changes, anything like that, we'll update it.
You have to do another one.
Yeah, it's just an updated report, but we call it dating down our file. And then we'll revise the title report.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of us real estate agents that don't realize every time we renegotiate something, you guys have to do another one. Sorry.
That's okay. That's
Well,
okay.
it's important.
No problem.
Yeah, we have to
Mhm.
search all the public records and just
Mhm.
make sure everything is included, deeds, easements, assessments, restrictions on the property, maybe there's civil or probate, court records that need to be, taken care of. Maintenance agreements are going to be on there. Any debts and other burdens, those can pop up any day. So it's important for us to keep those title reports updated.
About how many times do the records get checked in, let's say, a 30-day transaction just for a regular house in town? Like, how many times are we talking about checking those records?
Well, we really don't unless something is instigating us to do it, like the sales price change or something like that. But then escrow, since they monitor the closing date, they pay attention to the closing date and then request the update from us.
Oh, gotcha. So let's talk about the difference between title and escrow, because we do have a lot of people from other places and it's different
That's
in
right.
Oregon.
Yeah, it is very different. It's different animals in Oregon. A lot of them, other states, they're not so much different. In Oregon, escrow handles the closing side and all the funds. They clear the liens that we show. In title, we just do the report, the search the public records, and we issue the title report. And then after it closes, we issue the policy.
Yeah, so in Oregon, we need both, right? We have escrow, who's going to be the neutral third party, and they're going to look at every single document and make sure all the X's and I's and T's are dotted and crossed and all that. They're going to handle the money. They're going to talk to our title department is great with talking to buyers and sellers and explaining things that are on that preliminary title report. But the escrow officer is going to be the one making sure everyone gets paid and all documents are signed, and working with title and getting everything recorded as well. But right before we close on a transaction, we're going to do that date down that Diane was talking about and make sure nothing last minute has popped up before we change ownership.
And always at the time of recording, always.
Oh, so very, very last minute.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I didn't know that. And all of that's done electronically?
Yes.
Okay. So back in the olden days, because I hear stories.
I was back in the olden days. Yeah, you can ask me this.
Yeah. So what was it like, before everything was automated and digitized? What was the actual process?
Well, I actually wasn't recording years ago, and I would sometimes make 6 or 7 trips to the courthouse in a day, carrying the documents over there, waiting for that, racing the other title company so you could be the first one, so your stack got processed first. And then you would, as the day transpired, the clerk's office would leave copies of everything, and we would physically have to stand there and go through them to make sure, nothing was recorded right ahead of us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a little bit difficult.
Wow.
It's way easier now.
So now it's done electronically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So one of the things that comes up on these searches are names. And sometimes people have a lot of names and sometimes they have the wrong name. What are some of the things that can happen with that?
Well, not only do you have the names, you also have how they're vested in title too, right? So we have to make sure we're dealing with all the right parties. And sometimes things will be recorded incorrectly, and maybe names are spelled wrong. So there may be times where we have to fix the spelling in someone's name, but you're going to see different vestings. That's where you're mainly looking at names, is in the vesting, and then who's going to be buying the property, who's going to be coming into title, and how they're going to be vested. So we always have to have a vesting in there. There's different types of vesting. So most of the time, husband and wife are going to be as tenants by the entirety. Then you have, of course, maybe you have a boyfriend and girlfriend that aren't married, and they maybe don't plan on getting married, but they do want to make sure that if they pass away, the property is going to go to their significant other. So they're going to go into title as rights of survivorship. But then, of course, you have, maybe sisters and brothers that want to go and buy a property together. They're going to go into title as tenants in common, because they're going to actually delegate out who's getting what percentage of the property. So maybe they're going to be 50% interest, or 25 and 25 and maybe 25. So with tenants in common, you have to actually say, you know, what percentage of interest that they have. You're going to have trust, you know, people,
different
yeah.
entities, LLCs,
Mhm.
and all that. Mhm.
yeah. So yeah,
And
that's
names like, it's very helpful if you have John Smith coming into title to get a middle name, because it eliminates a lot of stuff that people don't want shown. They don't want every judgment hit against John for us to show those title, you know. Well, and that's not necessarily a thing we do anymore, because, you know, judgments don't really attach to buyers anymore. If they're getting the purchase money loan, you know, won't jump ahead of that anymore. So it's not that big of a deal as it used to be.
Yes, we do ask for extra documentation. You know, if your name is John Smith, you know, maybe where did you live before, you know, what's your middle name, and we'll get a little bit more information, and that way we can decipher if certain liens and judgments belong to them or not.
Yeah, wow, there's so much that you dive into in the title company and escrow. We're talking to First American Title today, Brandy Jennings and Diane Davis. Thank you so much for being on. We are going to have to take a quick break here to say thank you to our sponsors. We're gratefully brought to you every week by John L. Scott, Ashland and Medford, the local Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, RVAR, and also Guy Giles Mutual Mortgage Lending. So those are the generous folks that bring you our show every single week. We're going to take a quick break and then come back and talk more with Brandy Jennings and Diane Davis of First American Title. Do not go away. Well, welcome back to the Real Estate Show, folks. We're talking to Brandy Jennings and Diane Davis today of First American Title. Thanks for being on the show, you guys.
Thank you.
So right before the break, we were talking a little bit about vesting. And that's a term that we use all the time, but can you take just a little step back and talk what vesting is and why you need to have a conversation with the people that you might leave behind should you pass to the great real estate place in the sky?
Yeah, your vesting kind of is establishing any future or possible probate issues, or to avoid possible probate issues is probably the better choice and better route to take. So when Brandy mentioned the survivorship, so the husband and wife is tenants by the entirety, that's an automatic survivorship between the husband and wife.
You have to be married to get that tenants of survivorship?
Tenants by the entirety.
Tenants by
I'm
the
sorry,
entirety.
excuse me. I only do
Yeah.
this every day. I'll be quiet.
You do. And then but then if not, if you're a long-term partnership or something like that, that's when you'd want to do not as tenants in common, but with right or survivorship, establishes the same thing as a husband and wife. With that language is the same thing as tenants by the entirety.
Okay.
So both would avoid probate. It automatically goes to the other one without
Oh, gotcha.
you know, and then when something happened to the remaining one and they didn't do anything after that, they didn't put it into a trust or anything like that, then it would be probated. So, and then trust is another way to avoid probate, or you need to show your LLC. But you have to establish, you know, EIN numbers and numbers for that and stuff like that.
So if you have an LLC and you want your LLC to buy a piece of property, how does that work?
They can, as long as you have that in your operating and, you know, things that are allowed for in your LLC, that's possible. And normally we would ask for a copy of it so we would know who all the members were. Most of the time, if the husband and wife entity, they're just the members. Sometimes it's a group of people, they have a managing member that can sign instead of all the members signing. So everything's spelled out in the operating agreement, and we have to review those often.
So, and the operating agreement of your LLC has to specifically say that you have the right, the LLC has the right to buy and sell real estate. Is that how that
Yes.
works?
Yes.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Interesting. So trusts are groups of people that come together for legal
Well, no,
avoidance of
it's the same
probate.
thing. They're usually a husband and wife. It's usually created for a husband and wife, or even a single person
Uh-huh.
don't want to go through probate. So you
Mhm.
create it, you establish who you want your successor trustees to be if you pass or you get incapacitated. It establishes also who the beneficiaries are. So sometimes these two are your successor trustees, but the other four kids, are the beneficiaries. So everything's gonna, roll to everybody when
Mhm.
somebody passes, and assets have to get dispersed.
Mhm.
So but it
Mhm.
also avoids probate that way.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
'cause probate can take a while sometimes.
Yeah, it really can.
Yeah.
Even on a good day. Yeah.
And spendier to have to take on those costs.
Well, and I think we all watch people go through this process every day. And when there is a hardship or a tragedy, it's more burdensome because they have the loss and then they have all this paperwork.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Very much. We've seen a lot of
decisions.
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can be hard. So one of the ideas of vesting is if you have groups of people that are not related, and this is kind of picking up some steam lately as properties get more expensive and people start forming groups. What are some of the opportunities for vesting if you're in groups of people that are maybe not related?
Most of the time, they're going to go into title as tenants in common, and then they're going to discuss what their percentage of ownership would be. So if it's going to be an equal split or however many people there are. But yes, tenants in common would be the vesting for people that are not related and want to have their percentage of interest. So let's say, we have brother and sister that own a piece of property 50-50 and sister passes away. Her 50% of her property of this property is going to go into probate. So
but just her 50%.
just her 50%.
Oh, interesting.
And then her heirs would once the probate closes, the heirs would be the new owner with the brother.
So, and that would be changed on the tax records of Jackson County?
Yeah, eventually
they
they would record a personal representative's deed or an affiant's deed, depending on what process they did.
And most of the time, the attorney would help with that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We love our real estate attorneys. And there's some really good ones.
We have very good real estate attorneys around here, very good to work with. So.
Yeah, we have a lot of smart people. So if you're in a situation, so in Oregon, and this confuses people, you don't have to be married. I'm sorry, if you are married, you can buy property and sell property without permission from your spouse.
Yeah, and I think this comes up a lot because we have so many people moving up to Oregon from California, and California is a community property state, whereas Oregon is not. So in California, a wife, she probably could go buy property, but then it's in both of their names, both husband and wife. But a wife here in Oregon can purchase a property on her own, but it is still a marital asset. It still does need to be addressed in a divorce situation. So most of the time when there's a divorce, there's going to be something recorded about that divorce, and we're going to have to possibly extend closing just to make sure everything is being addressed properly.
Well, let's talk. Oh, go ahead, Diane.
Oregon, all the divorce proceedings, when they file those, they have a statute built into the petitions that have an automatic restraining order not to sell or dispose of any assets.
Oh, so that's handy.
That automatically makes you required to reach out to the other party if you're going to try to sell while that divorce is still pending.
Gotcha. So is it better to dissolve your assets while you're married if you're planning a divorce, or is it better to get it?
I don't think we could probably guide on that.
Well, people ask that. People do ask, sometimes you get called for an appointment and they say, and they're all very nice about it with each other. And they're saying, well, we're going to get a divorce, and they want to know, what to do. So probably
As
just,
long as they're both amicable and they can close it together, then that's it. But it, you never know. It takes one little incident to make that change. And
Yeah.
so,
yeah,
It's really just up
yeah.
to the parties, and hopefully they are amicable and they can talk it all through. But if they are going to get a divorce and are moving forward with the divorce, and that's when we go into escrow, it is kind of, I don't like using the word red flag, but it is going to bring up some additional things that need to be handled through escrow and title.
Mhm.
Close.
So maybe plan a little more time just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah. And tell the other people who you're buying or selling with, so they know to be prepared too.
Communication is
Mhm.
key.
very good
Yes.
idea. Very good idea.
Yeah. So the preliminary title report itself is many, many pages. And some of them are self-explanatory and some aren't. There's a section on the standard preliminary title, and it's called exceptions.
Yeah.
So can we talk about that? Because we get lots of phone calls about that.
Absolutely. Well, the first few exceptions that you see on there are basically talking about the things that are not covered by title insurance, because these preliminary title reports come out and everything that we're putting on here is a public record. So if there are things that are not a public record, they're not going to be on the title report, but they're not going to be covered by title insurance because there's no way to really insure things that we don't know about. And then you're going to move into your standard regular exceptions, which normally start with your taxes. So, what were the taxes last year? And sometimes you're going to see little codes or words on there that talk about some kind of maybe exemption or maybe it's used for farm use. So if someone was to purchase a piece of property that had, farm use and a discounted rate on their taxes, but they decided once they own the property, they were no longer going to use the property for farm use, they may not have the discount that was showing on the previous year's taxes. So they may have to pay more in taxes. So it's important to kind of really look at what the taxes were and what may be changing after they take ownership, to see what future taxes may look like.
Mm-hmm. So taxes are definitely something that shows on the exceptions. What other kinds of items might show up on that?
So you're going to see easements, lots of easements for like Pacific Power, your power company, or maybe the city of Medford. There's, assessments for that, depending on whatever city you're in, maybe Central Point. We're just speaking in a Jackson County level here right now, but city easements or what am I missing here?
Like restrictive covenants or CCNRs if you're in a subdivision.
Oh, right.
And the
Yeah.
bylaw, then the homeowners association, and that's a good read that everybody, especially if they're worried about being monitored a lot. There's some subdivisions that monitor those more closely than others, so the buyers always want to dig into that.
And there's so many different types of easements. Some people will see easement and just skim right over it, but maybe there's, irrigation or water rights, and maybe they just think they have water rights, but just because there is an exception for water rights doesn't necessarily mean they have them. They still have to do their due diligence and contact the water company. What type of water rights do I have? Is there actual irrigation, or, sometimes you're going to see reciprocal easements or maintenance agreements that they really should read through to see, if this is a private road, who's going to pay for the maintenance on this road? If we know it's a private road, I'm not seeing that there's a maintenance agreement. Who's going to pay for this? So, we have statutes with the county or city that would talk about, well, if there's nothing recorded, then the standard would be you pay for your portion. So really important to look at every single one of those exceptions, along with those exceptions for easements and, HOAs and CCNRs. You're going to see, of course, any deeds of trust that may be attached to the property. Those are loans against the property that need to be paid through escrow before we transfer ownership. And you also may see some judgments or liens, maybe for child support, or maybe a collection that never got paid, or maybe some IRS taxes that never got paid. Those will all attach as well.
I know we coming up on another break real quick, but one time we had a engaged couple, and one had not told the other about an old DUI that they were making payments on. and there was quite a kerfluffle. We almost didn't have the wedding.
Really?
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. This is all going to be public knowledge, folks.
That's right. That's right.
So we're talking to Brandy Jennings and Diane Davis, the First American Title here locally on McAndrews and Crater Lake Avenue. We're going to have to take another quick break to say thank you to John L. Scott, Ashland and Medford, Guy Giles Mutual Mortgage, and our local Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. You can catch a repeat of this broadcast tomorrow, Sunday at 6 p.m. So stay tuned for more. Brandy Jennings and Diane Davis will be right back. Well, hey, everybody, we're finishing up here with the Real Estate Show. We've got Brandy Jennings and Diane Davis, First American Title, talking about preliminary titles. And one of the things we were mentioning during the break, you guys brought up was, we jokingly called it the thorn in your side, but it has to do with access. So let's hear what that's about.
Yeah, very important. Whenever you're looking at your title report and you don't abut a public road, and sometimes even when you do abut a public road, but you're traveling over the neighbor's property to get to your property because you have a shared driveway. But in either case, if you're not accessing direct into your property, you always want to make sure you have an appurtenant easement, meaning benefiting easement, and it benefits and runs over the neighbor's property for the benefit of your property to provide access. Or sometimes you're way out and you see a lot of properties saying, hey, we back up to BLM, and there's no, sometimes that access is over the BLM land before you get into your parcel. So you have to have a permit to cross over the BLM land to get to your property. So you just always got to make sure what properties you're crossing over before you get to your property, and have either easements from the private landowners or permits or casual license use agreements from the government, the BLM.
So how does that work with, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Or Forest Service, sometimes we see too.
So are those permits temporary? Is that why you have to keep getting?
Oh, yes. Yeah, each property owner has to reapply for their own use, unless you're in a area that they call a casual use area, which some of the areas offhand I can think of is like out past Cantrell Buckley on that road out there. They have some casual use areas where they just issue a blanket letter saying, yeah, these properties all use this road and it's fine. They don't need a permit. But if you're not in one of those scenarios, the permit goes only to the party that actually lives there at the time. So it doesn't transfer automatically from buyer to buyer.
Interesting. And we have so much wildland around us, plus farmland. And I didn't clue in until right this second, and I apologize, but you guys' job is actually kind of hard because you're not just dealing with our little urban areas. You're going all the way out to public lands, rural property, riverfront. There's a lot of issues that are unique to each one of those types of property.
Yeah, and our Jackson County operation actually also handles Klamath County and Curry County.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
We just took on Curry about last year sometime.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How's that all going?
Oh, great.
That county had,
Curry's a little tougher.
Curry County had, it was a sad story, a ransomware attack on the county itself.
Oh, no.
Last April, and it was big and took down most all the county sites. They lost everything. So that was April, and they just got back online kind of within the last month or so for e-refiling and all that stuff. So that kind of put us on hold a little bit, but it's back. It's nice. It's nice to be able to, help. So many of our local agents actually have properties listed in Curry and Klamath. So it's been nice that we acquired those counties.
Yeah, because we all kind of think of it as Southern Oregon.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. That's right.
But we don't actually have physical offices in those two locations. And so people get confused, like, how do you make this happen? A lot of this is e-recording, along with the fact that we are the only title company that has a nationwide RON team. If you don't know what RON is, RON stands for Remote Online Notary. So we can
Oh,
sign our
nice.
sellers all online. It's almost like a FaceTime on the computer. They verify with their ID. They have special
Really?
equipment to scan that ID, make sure it's legitimate. They have to answer some questions to make sure, they are who they say they are. But yeah, so most of our sellers are able to sign that way. Although a lot of people just love to come to Medford and go shopping.
They
and go
do.
to Costco, so it really is pretty convenient.
Very true, very true.
But
Yeah,
I did want to address access one more time, because sometimes people are going to see an exception that says lack of access, which means there is no actual access to this property that's, legal access. And a lender isn't going to be able to give a loan on a piece of property that doesn't have legal access. But sometimes you'll see this exception and say, well, that's strange. They do actually have access. They go on from this road. Well, sometimes easements can be recorded on the property that's given the easement. So maybe it's actually recorded against the property next door. So it's important when you look at that preliminary title report, sometimes you'll see notes as well. And maybe that easement that's recorded against a different property that works for this property is actually going to be in the notes, because it's not recorded against this property. It's not an exception on the preliminary title report, but they do have access. So sometimes there's a little bit of communication that needs to happen so that we can remove that lack of access exception, because there was one recorded against the property next door. So I just wanted to kind of point that out and make sure people know, if you don't have legal access, you're probably not going to get a loan.
Right. Well, and you want legal access anyway, because
Right.
especially if you're way out, regardless of how anybody feels about protection out in the hinterlands, a lot of Southern Oregons have them.
Yeah. And the other part is surprising is sometimes, we're sitting here looking at a map and sometimes the aerial, but you still can't see where the access is. So sometimes you actually have to, you'd be surprised how many, like, you're just sure the access is coming from this road, you can see here, but you can't see it to here. But then somebody comes sit with you and like, oh no, we access it from the south side of the property. And we're like, oh, we've been looking up here for access, and you find it, so it's kind of a needle in a haystack search sometimes, knowing where access even is, until you get somebody that's been there and can guide you a little bit better.
So we only have a couple of minutes left. We have taxes coming up, and that's going to be a big job for you guys. How's all that going?
It goes pretty smooth around here. Yeah. Taxes normally, the tax year is kind of different, and I think it's different in every state, but in Oregon, taxes run from July to July. So that's your year. However, you don't pay them until November, and the tax bill comes out in October. So right now, taxes are a lien that's due, but not yet payable. So a lot of time during this time frame, you're going to see tax holdbacks, where we're going to hold back a little bit more than last year's taxes and hold those taxes in the file and pay them as soon as that new bill comes out mid-October. I'm trying to remember. It's the November 15th is when you can pay your taxes, but you can also pay them in thirds. February and May are when you can pay them. But if you pay them in November, you get a little bit of a discount from the county. So people do like to do that. But yeah, tax time is always a good time.
Well,
that's when you'll see a lot more of those updated title reports coming out at you.
Yes.
Because you're getting through the crunch of the taxes.
Yeah, that's right.
A couple other things I just feel like we should talk about, because we're talking about preliminary title reports, is legal descriptions. It's important to make sure you are looking at the right property. Maybe you don't have the right legal description on there. There are different types of legal descriptions. Most people don't have to know how to read them. Lean on your title department. Lean on your title and escrow company.
Yeah, you guys are amazing. Answer your phone. We've had conference calls lined up with everybody. What's a good phone number to get a hold of you, Brandy?
My phone number is 541-621-6125. That is my cell phone number, but you can also reach any of us at the office at 541-779-7250.
It was such a delight. Thank you, Diane and Brandy. We'd love to have you on maybe after the first of the year to get ready for 2024.
Sounds great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Alice.
Okay, that's all for this week. We'll see you next week at 10 o'clock. This station, KCMX, FM 99.5. Have a great Southern Oregon weekend. Bye now.